Hey Linn! Yes, Linn Products, the Scottish hi-fi company out of Glasgow. Do you need another LP12 turntable service tech in Florida? Well, I'm your man. Call me. Welcome to the My Own Devices audio channel, where you can follow my journey through the universe of vintage, used, and new hi-fi audio gear. Please help me spread the word by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I also have a Patreon that you can join to get early ad-free new videos and free giveaways and exclusive content. So thanks for joining me. I started on my Linn journey in 2021 when I found this Linn Sondek LP12 turntable for sale locally. And I picked it up for a pretty good price, not super cheap, but well below market price considering its age and condition. Even though I'm from the USA, I spent my formative hi-fi years living in England. And during that time, if you read the British hi-fi press, you could not help but become brainwashed to believe that the Linn Sondek LP12 is the finest turntable you can buy. I know there were plenty of other fine British turntables out there, and many of those could objectively be considered as superior to the LP12, but there was still no shaking the belief that the Linn model was the one enthusiasts really wanted. As the decades passed, I got rid of my record collection, started in with CDs and then went down the downloads and then the streaming path. Over the last few years, I started to feel dissatisfied with streaming. I found it to be a soulless, lonely, empty endeavor. So I bought a turntable, and another, and another. And the records started to pile up. Now I'm all in with vinyl. It enriches my music-loving experience in a way that 100 million streaming tracks could never do. Last year, I made a video in which I replaced the suspension springs on my 34-year-old LP12. Not an easy task for a novice. I bought a budget-priced turntable jig, I watched a few instructional YouTube videos, and read the online Symbiosis LP12 setup guide. And I finally believed I was ready to give it a go. It took about 3 tries, but I eventually got the springs properly adjusted and the platter level, and the Linn bounce was pretty good as well. I've never announced this, but the chief Linn service trainer in the United Kingdom, Gordon Inch, reached out to me via Instagram and told me that he watched the video and I did a great job. That made me feel really good. Well, here I am again, going to attempt something much more ambitious than just changing some springs. Besides the new springs, my model has all the original 1988 components and is working just fine. However, I do get the urge to buy when I see an upgrade component for sale at a reasonable price. Over the past 3.5 decades since my turntable was built, Linn has designed quite a few new tone arms and cartridges that will work with my unit. And there have also been some significant updates to the motor, the power supply, the cables, the subchassis, and the bearing as well. So let's dive in. Looking inside, mine has the coffin-shaped subchassis that Linn started using in 1984. It also has the platter bearing with the black liner inside that came out in 1987. These are the parts I will be replacing today. In 1993, Linn updated the bearing and subchassis with the Cirkus combo. This gave the structure that supports the platter and tone arm much more strength and stability. I recently found an eBay deal that I quickly jumped on. For sale, there was a mint Cirkus bearing and subplatter, mounted on a much more recent Majik subchassis. The Majik subchassis is from 2013, and that has an aluminum box type structure instead of pressed steel. And it's actually the current model used in the $5,000 Majik version of the LP12. The price was well below market value, so I clicked the Buy It Now button with very little hesitation. Why would I do this if my turntable is performing just fine as it is? Good question. It's a Linn thing. For the past 50 years, they've continued to make the LP12 upgradable. And if you desired, a unit purchased in 1973 could have been kept updated to the current spec model over the decades. Unfortunately, the prices of most of the latest updates are a bit, as they say in England, dear. You know, Linn is regarded as a high-end brand with prices to match. But updating can add useful features, improve performance, and potential sonic benefits. It also adds value. If or when I decide to sell mine, it will be considered more desirable and I will be able to get more money for it because it has been upgraded. And the reason the seller offered these parts on eBay was because he upgraded his LP12 to the next level up bearing and subchassis. That's how the second-hand Linn economy works. And I'm doing it myself because there are not many authorized Linn dealers in the US. And the nearest one to me is a couple of 100 miles away. So my plan is to remove the original subchassis and bearing and replace it with the Majik+Cirkus. And that will require me to remove everything but the motor from inside the plinth. So wish me luck. I started out by removing the dust cover and the drive belt. Then I pulled the original subplatter up and out of the bearing housing. Because I'm about to flip the LP12 over, I must seal up the bearing housing with the tip of a rubber glove finger to prevent oil from dripping out and making a mess. I used a rubber band to keep it on tight. Now here it is, bottom side up, on the jig, and the 4 feet and 2 additional screws secure the bottom cover to the plinth. Looking inside the plinth, you could see the Valhalla circuit board mounted on the metal cross brace and the subplatter underneath, which is held in place by the 3 spring assemblies. There are also a few cables and wires and the motor in the upper right corner. It may look fairly simple, but there's more to it than you may think. This is the Majik subchassis with the tone arm board and Cirkus bearing sleeve already mounted to it. The substantial machined aluminum Cirkus subplatter goes with it as well. The new chassis goes in like this. It has a different triangular shape compared to the old one. I think it's pretty cool that these newer parts still fit inside a model that was designed decades ago. The first thing I did was remove the cross brace that has the circuit board mounted to it. I'll need to detach all of the electrical connections to it. Oh, and yes, I made sure it was not plugged in to the mains beforehand. And the cross brace has several screws and nuts holding it in place. And the 2 bolts are also grounding locations for the power supply and the funnel cartridge. I actually had to visit my local hardware store in the middle of this procedure because my socket was not deep enough for these longer bolts. Once all the screws and nuts are removed, the cross brace comes right out, and I just put that aside. After unplugging the tone arm cable, just 3 bolts hold the tone arm to the arm board. Very easy to do. Just be careful when maneuvering it out, especially with the cartridge still attached. The 3 suspension springs are held in place by grommets, washers, and nuts. I used a wrench socket with my fingers to loosen the nuts. They're not on very tight. After the springs are off, the subchassis just lifts off. I had a little difficulty getting the angle just right to quickly get it out. I actually unscrewed the tone arm rest from the arm board, and that helped a bit. Okay, it's out. Here it is. On to the next step. I pulled the new Majik subchassis up through the bottom and the 3 holes lined right up with the 3 bolts. Amazing! Then I put the springs, grommets, and washers back where they were before I started this whole thing, and just screwing them all with my fingers just tight enough to hold. Next I reattached the tone arm. The bolts require a good and firm tightening. The cross brace went on next, which took a few minutes as I checked my photos to make sure that I connected all the screws, nuts, and wires properly. I reconnected the tone arm cable and all the wires to the circuit board. Had to make sure the wires were free and clear inside the plinth. Any snags or hang-ups can impede the LP12's performance. I then flipped the LP12 right side up in order to be able to complete the next few steps. The platter goes in the bearing sleeve next, but not without a few dozen drops of special black Linn bearing oil, and the paper towel is there to catch any overflow. And the platter will spin a long time without the belt attached. Speaking of belt, this is a replacement rubber belt that I got a few months ago. The official LP12 belt sells for $112 in the US, which to me is somewhat excessive and I won't pay it. In the UK, they go for around £60. I got this belt from a UK seller called Vinyl Passion, who sell replacements for £27, and it works just fine. I'll put a link below in the description. I left the bottom cover off because the vital leveling and spring adjustment step is next. Why is it so vital? Well, take a look here. As it is now, I don't believe it will play very well. Everything needs to be as level as possible, which means first leveling the jig and then turning the nuts on the ends of each of the springs until the platter is plumb and the arm board is level with the edges of the wooden plinth. And let me tell you, this is the trickiest part. I'm not going to get into it now. This video is long enough. I'll post some links by Linn employees demonstrating how it's done below. So after all that expense and effort, you may be asking, Dave, has it made any difference at all in how your records sound now? In my opinion, it was an unqualified success. Obviously, I cannot do a quick before and after A/B comparison, but having lived with the warm and luxuriant sound of this turntable for almost 2 years, the new parts have certainly tightened up the bass, improved clarity, and extended the higher frequencies. Now, I've read accounts by individuals who've installed the circus bearing and didn't like it much, resulting in them putting the original one back, claiming the sound was too neutral and lacking the warmth they desired. In fact, I do like the updates a lot, and I'm very happy with the results. I believe the character of my LP12 has been transformed by the combination of the Majik and Cirkus. And I'm looking forward to future upgrades to the motor, the power supply, and other bits and pieces. And you know, I'll be waiting to hear from Linn in the near future, asking me to become their newest LP12 service tech in Florida. So that's it. I recommend that if you have an older LP12, try out a few updates or upgrades. I believe you'll be very pleased with the results. And as always, don't forget to enjoy your own devices. Bye.